KenPom was enlisted by the WCC to come up with their model for seeding for their league tournament, if there is a league tournament. Now, we hope there's going to be one. We don't know if Gonzaga and BYU are going to bail and this league tournament goes to you know what. But if there's a league tournament, KenPom has been enlisted. Most of the, I checked yesterday, Ken, with most of the leagues, and like out of the whatever there are now, 31, 32 leagues, like 27 of them just use winning percentage. And a couple, I looked at it like the WAC is winning percentage times, games played. The SWAC has a 75% winning percentage times 25 games played or something. Horizon's got a little bit different one. Big South is weighting wins and losses and games played a certain percentage. Tell us a little bit about the WCC and what you've come up with, because I actually think it makes sense.
Yeah, it's just it's not even really a formula, but it's kind of an algorithm that looks at conference play, doesn't know anything about any other games besides conference games, looks at wins and losses, and determines basically, how good your record would be against the entire league based on what you've done against the schedule you've played. So it gives you what I call an adjusted winning percentage and orders the team by that. So the WCC, the WCC is really unusual, first of all, just in terms of the entire conference structure, right? Going from Gonzaga to Portland, there's a huge difference in team quality that doesn't exist anywhere else. And on top of that, the schedule differences so far this year have been stark. Like St. Mary's has played, so you got Gonzaga, BYU, and Pepperdine, top three teams. They haven't lost anybody else outside of those three so far this year. St. Mary's has played those teams 3 times, and they're going to play Gonzaga next, so they'll play a 4th game. Santa Clara hasn't played those teams any times. Loyola Marymount hasn't played those teams any times. Pacific has played those teams 3 times, and they play BYU next, so they'll play them 4 times as well before those other 2 teams have played them. So anyway, huge differences in schedule strength, and this just kind of normalizes it, and it doesn't, it kind of eliminates the incentive for trying to play a bunch of games at the end of the year or complaining about your circumstances or whatever. It just tries to deal with what's going on,
or bail on something, which a lot of teams have been doing and saying, well, we don't have enough players if they're playing a good team, and they bail. Now it's, at least you're saying, hey, St. Mary's has played, their record doesn't look that good, but they played really good competition, so we're going to reward them. And right now they would be seeded in your algorithm?
Yeah, they're 4th right now, so they're 2 and 4, and they're seeded 4th, which is going to look kind of weird. It's going to look even more weird when they lose to Gonzaga and they're 2 and 5, and they're still seeded 4th. Because you're not going to get penalized for losing to Gonzaga, as you shouldn't. Right. But if you just look at them and compare them to Santa Clara, who I think now Santa Clara's 3 and 3, but if you look at Santa Clara's schedule and you look at St. Mary's, they probably would be 3 and 3 or 4 and 2 against Santa Clara's schedule. So that's why they're rated that high.
Rob, are you there?
Rob is overwhelmed.
Rob doesn't know what to say. He's so shocked. He has honestly, he's so surprised that you're on the pod this morning. I think he's in awe. I think he's intimidated by you, Ken.
I am. I'm in awe of the presence of KenPom, because I really look at the site I don't know.
I got another one. Unless you're ready.
Twitter, I think that's the only things that I look at on the internet.
Yeah, in fairness, we surprised Rob. He wasn't allowed to prep. He didn't know about the WCC thing.
It's only my first cup of coffee, all right? I'm still getting the wheels turning a little bit over here.
What's your take on the net, Ken? I know you don't have the complete, right? You still don't have the actual factor, everything that's weighed into the net, do we? We don't.
No, we don't. I guess that's the thing. When I'm thinking about what I did for the WCC, I can produce past seasons ratings if you want to see how it worked in past seasons or for the current season. Coaches have asked me from other leagues, hey, what does this look like for my league? And that was part of the stress test on it, was just making sure it made sense for other leagues. And that's the whole thing with the net, is that we don't get that, right? We don't get past seasons for the net. They just give us a formula and give us the current numbers. And but that's fine. It's a better starting point to evaluate team strength, obviously, than the RPI. In that sense, it's good. We still got to get to the point where we just kind of get to an even more objective place where we're not worried about what the athletic director of Duke, thinks about
100%.
Drake's resume or something like that. And so hopefully we'll get there someday, but I guess we're on the road.
How do you think it should be done? If you were running the NCAA tournament, how would you do it? Would you just look at, again, your ratings, the net ratings, Sagarin, how would you, if I gave you the opportunity right now to choose the 68 teams for the NCAA tournament? My guess is, to make money from people, you're going to say, just use KenPom.
No, I mean, the way it should work is that you have some way to evaluate a team's resume that is purely objective. So, whether you're using my system or the net or Sagarin or whoever, I don't care. But you need some way to evaluate how good teams are, first of all, and then you can value, hey, what is a road win at Seton Hall worth? How hard is that to win if you're a bubble team? Once you establish those things, then you can figure out how good a team's schedule is. So you can look at a Loyola and know that they haven't played a great schedule, but also know that, it's not so easy to go through the MVC schedule and have 2 losses. Like if you're a bubble team, like you're going to lose a couple of those games, right? Even though none of those games are top 50 games necessarily, except maybe Drake, getting through that schedule and losing 2 games is like an accomplishment. So just a system like that tells you, hey, how have you performed against your schedule relative to the average bubble team? Once you have that, then you can basically kick the committee to the curb and you can come up with a list of 1 to whatever and figure out who's in and who's out and not have to worry about, again, what some random person's opinion is about a few teams.
The only thing I would say, the only other factors I would weigh in, which are hard for you to do and anybody to do, is like the injuries, the coming back from this year is different, obviously, with coming back from pauses. It's really hard to evaluate because it's so much about timing. But even with injuries and those things, I don't know. I mean, those have to be played in, don't they?
Like, why do they have to be played in? Like, okay,
James.
Is there any other level? Is there any other level of basketball where we're looking at, hey, the Lakers are, a 2 seed in the NBA, but man, Anthony Davis missed those 8 games. So let's make him a 1 seed because obviously that's who they would have been. Like people would go crazy if you did that for the NBA. Like, why do we accept that for college? Your record is who you are. And if James Bouknight was out, that's a bad break, but good luck evaluating to me, you're giving you kind of free roll in that situation, right? If they win while he's gone, then okay, then they're great. And if they lose while he's gone, then he was out, so we should ignore those games. Like that, to me, that's not fair, and we're not really even good enough to evaluate to figure out hypothetically what they would have done without him.
Sure.
Ken, I'm curious. How much do you think that the actual results should play into that formula? Because my thing has always been the data and the numbers and all of these different metrics that we get are great for evaluating teams. But at the end of the day, I want that last shot. If it's 80 to 79, the team that's losing has the ball. I want that shot at the end of the game to matter, right? I want it to have a significance when it comes to where you get seeded and where you get placed in the tournament. Because otherwise, that's the whole thing that we love about the sport, right? It's those milliseconds when the ball's in the air, we're waiting to find out if a team's going to win or they're going to lose. And I want that shot to matter when it comes to where teams get seeded. So how much do you think that should kind of play into these formulas and where teams get ranked?
Well, I think, when you're picking teams for the tournament, that's all that should matter. That's what, that's one of the things with this whole WCC project is some of the coaches were like, hey, let's just do a conference KenPom. And I had to kind of explain that, that deals with scoring margin. It's going to be influenced by scoring margin. You probably don't want that. So when it comes to coming up with a method to select who gets in, I think that's what the NCAA has really done a poor job of communicating to people is that, the net is influenced by scoring margin. Obviously, you're not going to pick teams based on the net. The net is just the starting point to establish how valuable is a win versus a certain team, how difficult is it to beat a certain team. And once you do that, then you can just look at a team's resume. Hey, here's their wins and losses. Here's who they've beaten. Here's who they lost to. How difficult was that to accomplish? How impressive is that resume? Absolutely. It should absolutely be about wins and losses. And you're exactly right. That's why we watch the game. And I'm definitely uncomfortable with the fact that people think, if we just move from 26th to 23rd in the net, we're going to be a lock. And obviously, in order to do that, you got to keep your starters in at the end of a 15-point game when you normally wouldn't. That is weird. And we shouldn't be incentivizing that kind of thing.
Is it crazy to think now? And Rob laughed at me earlier this year when I said, because I haven't been a huge gambler, obviously, with college basketball in the past till it became legal. Now I'm looking at it more, and literally that Vegas looks at your numbers, and that's how they come up with their lines. Rob's laughing at me now. He's laughing, but it is crazy.
This year, This year, Ken, this is what I'm talking about.
Whatever. Go F yourself. It's just crazy to think, isn't it, that you produce this in which everybody in Vegas, I mean, it's crazy how close the lines are to what your predictions are.
Ken, just wait until next year when he tells you to buy GameStop stock.
Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah, it is kind of crazy, I guess. I mean, it used to be, I think, a bigger deal. Now I think it's more, not necessarily coincidence, but, if you're going to come up with a formula to create a point spread, like there's only so many ways you can do it. So I think whatever Vegas does and whatever I do are going to be pretty similar methods. I think maybe, the real change is that, 5 years ago, you couldn't bet on a lot of these like lower conference games. You couldn't bet on a WAC game. You couldn't bet on a SWAC game. And now you can. And so I think maybe Vegas probably doesn't spend a whole lot of time putting together the spreads for those games because don't get a ton of action. But yeah, it's pretty wild, like no question. I don't know if you ever heard the story about the Maryland Seattle game from like 2011. But I was just starting my preseason ratings, and it was like the second game of the season. And Maryland was playing Seattle, and Maryland had Gary Williams, and Seattle was playing super up tempo. I think Cameron Dollar was still there, and the game, you knew it was going to be a super high scoring game, and I had a glitch in my website, and it said the final score was going to be like 65-62 or something. And so some Vegas sportsbook set the total at like 127, and the entire day, it just went up, 130, 140, 150, and eventually they took it off the board, and that was like a definite case where like we caught Vegas red-handed, just like copying my work.
That's pretty good. Any other great stories that you've had? Like, what's your favorite story? Maybe somebody that reached out to you that you were just like blown away, that has called you for advice or for information?
I once got an email from Richard Perry. Does that name ring a bell?
Yeah.
AKA the Fixer, I think that's his nickname.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really did?
I mean, he said that's who he was, and maybe he was lying. He was, I don't know what he was asking about. He wasn't asking me to fix games or anything. It was some legit question, and then I wrote him back, and then he wrote me back, and I was like, oh, hey, by the way, you might know who I am, blah blah blah.